Martinez is a monument now, a characterless tableau to borderless sociopathy.
You might remember that in 2023, Zaum released Disco Elysium's collage mode that lets you play around with character models, poses and stickers. What fewer people know is that it came with 4 hidden lore scenes. I will share my thoughts on what to make of them later. For now, let's just have a look at them.
Desperate to quell the rabble and rousers of the Commune uprising, Revachol I has taken his worst and most dramatic action yet. He has sent Royal Dragoons on horseback to pacify an angry mob, most of whom aren't even partisans. They share looks of terror, regret, and deceit with those they set alight. But they ignite much more than flames in the people targeted tonight.
The first scene is set in the year 02, at the onset of the anti-centennial or turn-of-the-century communist revolution. That's 49 years before the events of Disco Elysium. King Guillaume has already fled Revachol and left it to his nephew Revachol to crack down on the communist uprising. The scene reveals a glimpse of what the fishing village looked like before the civil war and the coalition's bombing campaign of 08. Little has been rebuilt since then. The cross that seems to be burning or shining over the church entrance is the icon of Pericarnassus, the first innocents.
You know this to be the star of Pericarnassus, or the Cairo, the central symbol of the Pericarnassian church, a star, a great moral height to be strived towards. 7th of March, 02. Simple men and women had taken up arms against the decadence and depravity of old money and drove the suzerainty into the sea. Communard heroes sit on the back of bullet-ridden, fatigued machines, a celebratory parade to help forget the wounds and lost loved ones. During this short-lived victory, it seems okay to let yourself be just a little happy.
The next scene is set a few months after the first one. Revachol has fallen and the Communards are celebrating the founding of the Commune of Revachol. The buildings along the Rue de Saint-Guilain are unscathed by the revolution, but show us what's destroyed in the coalition landing 6 years later, when an alliance of capital and foreign powers ended the Commune in Operation Deathblow.
You are witnessing a moment between eras, the birthing throes of transformation. Bulldozers lie dormant where once they were fishing huts filled with real-life people. But everything is now in service to the new complex that slowly emerges from the mud. The clear center for youth and education. The bitter taste of salt and silica dust hangs severely in the air.
Going into the medium-term future, we see the construction project that we helped Revachol with in the base game. We don't know if it will ever be finished, just that the fishing village and all its residents are gone. Evrat knew perfectly well that they had no other place to go. Only Idiot Doom Spiral seems to hold the position. Our favorite drunk, who is usually crackling with energy, now stares into his bottle with what looks like melancholia and loneliness. He appears to have fallen out of time. And just like him, the new development too looks out of place, as if it was copy-pasted onto the swampland. You have this vacation-looking patio hanging over the same dirty old water. Around the construction project you can still see all the defunct and abandoned boats, the same old rotten planks that we used to cross the swamp, the now dilapidated dock, and the street to the south is still broken too. But at least we see 2 kids who seem excited for what's being built.
It's tomorrow, the day after. The wedding is over, the guests are gone, and the cleaning crew hasn't come yet. They're about 17 years late now. This isn't abandonment, or even apocalypse, though some may say so. Martinez is a monument now, a characterless tableau to borderless sociopathy, where only brands and good living exist. Pay for your bag, and don't forget your receipt.
Again, we witness a development that doesn't look organic. But this time it's by the hand of capital that made Martinez the playground for its corporations. The icon of this future might be the horse monument that transitioned from experimental art depicting the transition from monarchy to a free Revachol into a simplified and ahistoric atrocity of corporate art. The bullet hole-ridden walls, the ornaments and railings of the plaza, and even the trees and benches have been replaced with plain concrete, similar to Evrat's youth center. The whirling in rags got uglified, and the overall state of the place is desolated, even worse than before. Plants grow through cracks in the concrete, and there's trash everywhere. The place is abandoned, and the few electric carriages parking there seem broken down. Evrat's plan to keep foreign capital from occupying the city did not seem to have worked. The youth center didn't kickstart the revitalization of Martinez either, and the fishing village might have been destroyed for nothing. And what's worse, Evrat's plan to refurbish Martinez with union money made from drug trade seemed to have come at a higher cost than expected. Nacra is in Disco Elysium what Narcan is in our world, an opium antagonist. There must be a reason why there's not only a big poster of it in the middle of the city, but even a vending machine of it. The plaza now seems to be a big ad space for a multitude of corporations. Fritte is the convenience store that we know from the game. They seem to have expanded before withdrawing from the place again, leaving its remains to rot. Then we have Ballast, the sailing boat manufacturer, Falm, the sports apparel brand, Trigat, the one that made Kim's camera, Astra, the cigarette brand, D'Argent, a newspaper we know from the book, Freibank, a major bank from the Cutler Isola, and Jean Baptiste, the corporation that, according to Joyce, is even more ruthless in its expansionism than Wild Pines. It seems like letting big corporations move in paid for a few band-aid solutions to the district's infrastructure, but then only sucked the last lifeblood out of Martinez before leaving it to the dogs. I've been wondering what the caption meant when it said that the cleaning crew was 17 years late now. I assume that the scene is set in the year 71, according to the poster that seems to announce some kind of big sporting event. That is 20 years after the events of Disco Elysium. So what happened 17 years before the scene, or 3 years after Disco Elysium? My first thought was La Retour, or The Return.
The Return is part urban myth, part political science. It's a fool's hope, sir. They say there will be an event, that it will happen somewhere here.
So she thinks, at least partly, that this return will feature a self-governing Revachol.
At the end of Disco Elysium, Esprit du Corps lets you listen to the head of the Precinct 41's plans to recruit Harry for a revolution in Revachol shortly after the game's events. I always thought of that as La Retour and as a potential setting for Disco Elysium 2, but looking at Martinez in the year 71, it either didn't happen or it must have failed catastrophically. So I assume that the wedding really just describes foreign capital settling in Martinez. It turns out that it's this desolated condition in which the city meets its end. 2 years after the scene, Revachol will suffer complete nuclear devastation by a fleet of masked destroyers led by a new innocence who wants to sink the whole Isola into the Pale. It is anticlimactic, to say the least, for this to be the final state of Martinez, a place that in Disco Elysium was so full of history, promise and soul. So what do we make of the scenes? The collage mode rolled out as an act of damage control in March 2023, a time when Zaum's reputation was already tainted after they fired Korwitz, Rostov and Hinper from the studio. So if I wanted to say something nice about the scenes, is that in the best case they reflect on the studio's condition and project it on the game's world. Revachol first loses its soul and then ends up being a bland, commodified shell of its former self. And now it's minutes to midnight for both the city and the studio. But that interpretation presupposes artistic self-awareness, and I don't know how much that is at play here. If I needed to sum up my impression of the scenes, I would say that it's like you told an AI to mimic the visuals and writing style of Disco Elysium. Sure, you get a somewhat sufficient imitation of its surface aesthetics, but without all the subtlety, the tension, the nuance, or ultimately the art of the original game. Good art is always dynamic. There is something captured in it that is more than what is depicted, something that makes it become alive in the mind of the beholder. Disco Elysium's writing, visual art and world building always pointed beyond what's at hand, be it through ambiguity, contradictions or purposeful gaps of information that you have to bridge with your own imagination or detective's work. That is what made it so fascinating to talk and speculate about it. Especially in world building, some things need to be left to the imagination of the reader. and Disco Elysium mastered this art. You can listen to Joyce monologuing about the Pale or Shivers foreshadowing the future of Revachol, and yet these things don't lose any of their mystery. That is how you produce lore. The scenes of the collage mode, however,
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
they introduce a mode of storytelling that is completely foreign to Disco Elysium. The scenes simply tell you what happened and what will happen, and what will happen happens in an all too predictable way. There is no mystery left. I can't tell you how long I played Find Waldo with these pictures, trying to discover some kind of detail that makes me excited about its wild implications. I just assumed that at some point I would notice something that would make me shout, "Whoa, this is big." But no, the scenes don't set up anything. There's nothing boiling below the surface. They just kinda ended the story. The story of Revachol with all of its history, its promise, its people and soul.
I am la Revacholière. I am the city. I am a fragment of the world's spirit, the genius Loki of Revachol. I need you. You can keep me on this earth.
This soul died the most one-dimensional death imaginable. And the story of Disco Elysium, the adventures we had and the discoveries we made in the city have amounted to nothing, it seems. La Retour, a centerpiece of the local mythology, didn't happen either, or it was too insignificant to have any effect on the city. One day I will return to your side? I guess not. Now, Disco Elysium was always a depressing game, set in a depressing city, but there was ambiguity in it, a potential and hope by which both Harry and the city pointed beyond their current selves. I always thought of the menu screen as the perfect visualization of this. In the foreground we have the shabby, grey and poverty-ridden townscape, but then also a colorful flashiness that wants to break out of it. Wherever you look, there's always an artistic excess over what is depicted. You don't find this expressive art in the new scenes, and by that I don't mean expressionism as a genre, but simply expressiveness. This doesn't express anything, it just shows you stuff. There is no artistic surplus of any kind. And what I said about the art is true for the writing too. Don't get me wrong, not every sentence I read needs to leave me awestruck with my mouth wide open. But this is supposed to be meaningful, hard-hitting storytelling that serves as a conclusion to the game. These are the last words of Disco Elysium ever, condensed into 4 single paragraphs. And yet it doesn't meet the average writing quality that the base game has spread out over more than 1 million words. It's kitsch. The bitter taste of salt and silica hangs severely in the air. This shouldn't have gone past any editor, if there was one. It's a forced emulation of Disco Elysium's writing without really being there. The lore and storytelling of Disco Elysium are so exciting because you don't know whether to trust the voices in the head of a brain-damaged alcoholic or the ideologically impaired actors of the city. But in this new authorial narration, there's nothing that you have to take with a grain of salt, and nothing that provokes your imagination. Now the big question is, are these scenes even canon? They have been created after Kurwitz and Hinper, the former creative and narrative leads, were fired. Some people attribute the narrative authority over Elysium to the original founders instead of the current Zaum studio that holds the intellectual property rights to it. And I don't know what Kurwitz and co think about the scenes. Maybe they hate them, maybe Kurwitz personally sanctioned them. We also don't know about the future of the Elysium IP. Looking at the latest direction of the current studio Zaum, it might be for sale for $1 next year. Or maybe the lawsuit is going well, and after reacquiring power over the IP, the first thing Kurwitz and co will say is, nah, scrap that. You notice, there's nothing I can say here that isn't speculation. But speaking about speculation, after rereading Kurwitz's Sacred and Terrible Air, I'm currently working on a deep lore video that goes into the origin of the Pale and other cool stuff that shaped the universe of Elysium. So if you are interested in that and want to find out what Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel has to do with all of that, you can subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I am genuinely interested in what you think about the new lore scenes. Maybe you caught a detail that I missed, or maybe you think I was too harsh on them. Let me know in the comments.